Hello, everyone. If we could go ahead and get settled, we'll get started with our afternoon session. thank you guys for staying on our afternoon session. My name is Natalia Tello. I'm the research manager at the National Mango Board, and today I will be moderating the afternoon session, which is titled From Country to Country, a global look at mango varieties and production. Before we get started, there was a question in the morning session about the genetic paper that was published from the National Mango Board. This was done by Dr. David Kuhn. If you guys are interested, you can just follow this QR code. It'll take you to the paper and it's public access, so you don't have to pay for the journal in order to access it. Okay, perfect. So here we have our agenda for today. We have great speakers from different countries. We hope that through this presentation, you guys can get a wider knowledge about mango production trends worldwide. But before I give the floor to our speakers, I want to touch on a few topics. So I want to talk to you guys about the National Mango Board, what we do. We're also going to talk about mangoes in the United States and how mangoes perform both at the retail level and at the consumer level. And this will really allow us to see those mango consumption trends. So to begin with, the National Mango Board is a USDA Agriculture and Promotion Board, which was established in 2005. We're actually about to celebrate our 20th anniversary, which is exciting. We are funded by industry assessments that are paid by mango first handlers and importers. So that's sort of how we get the money for our projects. Our mission overall is to increase the consumption of mangoes in the US, working united as an industry. Because we understand that mango consumption isn't just about the consumer or the retailer. It's also about the producer, the importer, the whole supply chain. So we do really want to bring the industry together as a whole. And our vision, which is sort of what we're looking for, is for mangoes to be an ongoing part of the American diet based on the versatility, nutrition benefits, and taste, and which will enable us to make mangoes a top 10 valued fruit in the US market by 2030. So we are a board that is composed of 18 members. So we have 8 importers, 7 foreign producers, 2 domestic producers, and 1 first handler. You actually will see a familiar face right here if you look towards the back. He also works in a research subcommittee. So these is the people that help sort of guide our internal decisions so we can make sure that the goals that we have in the National Mango Board are also the goals of the industry. And the National Mango Board is composed of 2 different programs, 2 main programs to say. So we have a marketing program which focuses on consumers. So whether we do promotions to put mangoes in the forefront through collaborations with Disney or Squishmallows, or if we share information with consumers on recipes, there's 2 questions that are commonly asked, which are also stated as 2 of the main reasons why people might not buy mangoes at the retail level. And that's because they don't know how to cut it or they don't know how to select it, right? So we make sure that we make that information available for the consumer. We also work on nutrition and health messages because we know that with fruits or with produce in general, people are really interested in their health benefits. So we really do want to highlight those in mango. We also work with retailers. I always say if you ever see this logo at your local grocery store, that's just us working in the backgrounds. We also do a lot of promotions where it's buy one, get one, or we have nutrition messages. So we work a lot with retailers in that sense. We also work in food service with chefs within their own restaurants or to create recipes that could be used by consumers. And we do communications and public relations. Our second program, which is the one I personally work in, is the research and industry relationship program. So we do a lot of nutrition and health. So this is the research that we do to really guide those health messages that we see right here. So we do that research internally so we can know what to tell the consumer. We also work in crop forecasting and analysis. So we have a mango crop projection. It's a little PDF that really tells you how much mango is coming into the US. It'll tell you which countries are currently packing, when it's supposed to get to the US, and we also do projections for the season. So this is just a really good tool for members of the mango industry to use to make their decisions within their companies. We also do production and post-harvest. So we work a lot with growers, whether they be internationally or nationally, on what issues they have within their production. And based on that, we do research projects, right? So whether it be in flowering, which is a really big issue everywhere, I feel, whether it be on optimizing irrigation or nutrition, those are things that we look at. And then we work in food safety and sustainability and industry relations. So industry relations is just our participation in events like this, where we either sponsor or we just take, we help with agendas and stuff of that sort. So if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about the National Mango Board and what we do, I do invite you to go to our website at mango.org. We still have this like little subsections right here, and there you can learn a little bit more about our programs. Now moving on, we're gonna talk about mangoes in the US. So we've had a lot of discussion on local mango production, right? So we know that within the US, mangoes are mainly grown in Florida, which is a big one. We have Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and California. However, we do know that even though this production acreage and production performance is increasing, mangoes grown locally don't really meet the demand. So it's really important to look at mango imports, which is what we have right here. So these are imports starting in 2022 to 2024 for all the major countries. However, and what this shows us is sort of how they've changed over the past years and which are the top mango producing countries, right? So for the top mango producing countries, we have Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, and Guatemala. And these actually make up 96% of mango imports into the US, right? Following that, we have a little bit of mango from Dominican Republic, which is less than 2%, and then India, which is 1%. And then for the rest of the countries right here, they make up less than 1%. However, something that's important to note here is that even though these countries still make less than 1%, their imports are increasing, right? So either they're going, maybe before they were less than 0.1%, right? So we do expect those trends to increase as well. And from those 5 main importing countries, you can also look at varieties. So we know that mango from Florida, they really do specialize on sort of gourmet varieties. But when we look at what's being imported, we do see these main varieties right here. So when we look at the average year over year, we do see the most mango that comes into the US is that Tommy Atkins at 38%. That's followed by Kent at 29%, which is a number that's been increasing slowly if you guys look at these gray bars. Then we have a little bit of Kent, Ataulfo, Hayden, and others. So those others could be your Nandok Mais and your Thai varieties, which do come, but in a smaller percentage. Now we're going to look at mango performance at the retail level. Here we're going to start looking at those consumption trends. So when we look at, let's say, the average dollars per store per week that are spent in mangoes, we see that mangoes rank 11th. Here we see that mangoes rank 16, actually, which is the same number as they did last year, which we see right here. When we sort of look at this data and we see that mangoes aren't really increasing, we might ask ourselves why. So when we look at the overall fruit category, we actually see that it's decreased in the last year. So that means that less people are spending money on fruit, right? Whatever is causing that, we're not 100% sure, but that's the numbers that we have. And when you look at mango specifically, you see that even though it's still 16, there was a slight increase, which is really good compared to other like staple fruits, such as apples and bananas and avocados that saw decreases. Here we have the average volume per store per week for mangoes. Here we are 11th. And these 2 numbers are the ones that we want to be at that top 10, right? We want mangoes to be a top 10 in this velocity. But when we look at this, we also see that it's the same as last year. And we do see a big decrease. So that's minus 9.5 in the volume. But when we look at the overall fruit category, we also see that decrease of 2.5. And something else that could be causing this increase in average is that for the 2023-2024 season, there were issues in 2 of the main producing countries, which are Peru and Ecuador, with climate. So overall, they just brought less mango to the store, right? And that's likely what was causing this decrease in volume. So now looking at performance at the consumer level, these results are based on a survey that we do monthly. So we ask people about their consumption trends when it comes to mango, and then we can get a lot of information on their consumption. So right here we have per capita availability. So these are the pounds per person per year that are consumed. If you guys see right here, we have 3.5, which is a slight decrease from last year. But as we mentioned, there was just less mango available due to import issues. And then here we have more information from that survey. So we asked consumers what percentage of their households are purchasing mangoes every 2 weeks, right? So we have 24.97% of people consume mangoes every 2 weeks. And the reason why we ask every 2 weeks is because that's the average shelf life of a mango. So we expect people, after the mango has reached its shelf life, to either eat it and buy some more, or maybe sometimes they throw it out. So we see right here, there's not really like a big trend, but you do see that we have some increases which tend to balance out, but then we continue to see it increase. So we expect it to start increasing in the following years. And also we have the average numbers of mangoes that are purchased per each household. In this case, we don't really see any trend. And we do see that the amount of mangoes are maintained between 3.4 to 3.9. And for 2024, it was 3.57. Now we're going to look a little bit about demographics. And by looking at demographics, we can really see our target audience. And that allows us to sort of make our marketing strategies more effective, right? So here we have the percentage of households that are buying mangoes by ethnic group. And we see right here is that people of Asian and Hispanic backgrounds are the ones that are buying more mangoes. But however, we do see for the other demographics increases in the trend. Following that, we have percentage of households that purchase mango by age. So we actually see that it's the younger demographics that are buying those mangoes. So people who are either under 25 or between 25 and 44, which a bit of increase. So even though the people who are 45 to 54 aren't really the ones consuming the most mangoes, we have seen a slight increase since 2019 in the trend of their consumption. Then we have percentage of households that are purchasing mangoes by incomes. And here we do see people that have higher incomes are consuming more mangoes. So we have people that are between the 75 to over 1,000K demographic buying more mangoes. But again, like I mentioned, when it comes to ethnicities, we do see an overall increase for each of the demographics. And the final one that we have here is the percentage households that are buying mangoes by education level. So here we have more people of the professional background buying mangoes. This could be because they have a little bit more disposable income or for whatever other reason. But again, we do see a slight increase in all the demographics as well. And what we can do with this information is if you're a producer, you're a retailer, you can get this information, see who your target audience is, and then do your marketing towards that. But us as the National Mango Board, we might work with that target audience, but we can also look at the different demographics that we see aren't increasing as much, and then we can work with them to have that increase in consumption, right? Because we want to make sure that more people are knowing mangoes, are consuming mangoes, and are coming back to it. And that brings me to the end of sort of that consumption trends part of my presentation. As I mentioned, the National Mango Board is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. This is a very big anniversary for us. So we're holding a gala in Anaheim, California for IFPA, which will be on Friday, October 17th of this year. If you guys are interested in attending, please let me know and I can give you more information. Does anyone have any questions? By the way, I'm sorry, just a housekeeping thing. We have the live stream going, so please make sure that you speak into the microphones.
Okay. So given uncertainty over tariffs, particularly agricultural tariffs, are there projections for how that's going to affect mango imports this year?
Sorry, since we're part of the USDA, we can't really touch on the information of tariffs. However, there are some resources that you can find online. I'm not sure if any of the researchers we have. Yeah. If you look at our crop projection, we get information from each of the producing countries, and they have taken into consideration those issues when they do their projections, right? So we can't tell you how much it's going to affect, but just know that if you look at our crop projections, that will kind of take that into consideration. Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any other questions? Perfect. So I'm going to give the word to Luis Intran, who will talk to us about Haiti and Dominican Republic.
Testing? Perfect. Hello. Um, my name is Luis Intron. I am a member of the Mango Board. I am the Research and Industry Relations Chair. Um, and I have been importing mangoes from the island of Hispaniola for the last 13 seasons, both from Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I started with a map um, just so I could show quick where the major growing regions are. There's over 100 varieties that grow on the island. Um, we'll go over varieties that are marketable and the ones that are being imported into the United States and abroad. But in the Dominican Republic, uh, the city of Bani is right over here, and this is the major growing region down here in the south. The Cordillera Central creates a barrier for the moisture, and it's way more arid to the south of the Dominican Republic, much better for the growing. Um, and the favorite mango in the Dominican Republic, although we don't see it that often over here, is the Banilejo, and it takes its name from the city of Bani, where generally most packing houses are down in that area. Haiti, a little bit different. The major growing regions are north of Port-au-Prince, in the valleys in the central area of Haiti. And we'll get into a little bit of what the issues with Haitian production are moving forward. This is a little video. I don't know how to play it. This is more to show you the topography of the area. But as you can see, the video is supposed to play. More arid, not as green. The cultivar is and the grove is on this area. It's all basically fed by well. Sorry, I can't play the video for you guys. Going backwards. All right. So as I mentioned, over 100 varieties on the island, both all around Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Thank you. The Dominican Republic, so the Mingolo is the main export variety. It's about 90% of the exports from the island. Banilejo, Keat Kent, Palmer Tommy Atkins, Crema de Oro. The Dominicans go crazy for it, but it's very difficult to find outside of the DR. And in Haiti, it's really Madame Francine is the queen, king, whatever you want to call it, and it is the national fruit. Jean Marie, Madame Blanc, and Miscas or other Haitian varieties. This box is a Banilejo box. It's a little, man, it's not my favorite, but I'm personally Puerto Rican. And we call them criollo mangoes, just little mangoes that grow around the island. We really don't know what all the varieties are. But they're just in your backyard and you grow up and you pick them, and Banilejo just happens to be that criollo type of mango from the south of the Dominican Republic, and it's popular. They love it. They have all these festivals around the mango, and I'm sorry? There you go. Different varieties. So Keat, I wanted to show you, and this is the green Keat, which is how we prefer to import it. As you can see, the seed is completely white. It has to be completely tender and white so that the consumer, and especially the Asian community, receives it. You have to be able to cut the seed completely through the middle, very little resistance. And then this is a Mingolo, and I wanted to show, this is how it's cut, packed, and this is a ripe Mingolo. It turns completely yellow. Shelf life is pretty long for a small yellow fruit with the Brix levels that it has. It's pretty shelf stable, so in the future, I think it'll continue to grow because it's really a mango that I think would do well at the retail level here in the United States. The Haitian variety, this is a Madame Francine. I think, personally, you can see the process is on the tree. I think the Madame Francis, the Brix levels are very high, sometimes into the 20%. Very, very fibrous mango. I think the best way to eat it is personally, as ripe as it gets, you just, before you cut it, you just mush it up and you bite a little piece of the end and you just slurp it out of the little hole. You kind of don't deal with all the fibers and everything, and you get that mango flavor. It's almost, the people in Haiti and the Caribbean love it, but I think it's one of the tastiest mangoes. If you avoid all the fibers in it. So Dominican volumes are approximately there will be about 2 million boxes this year. We're about 3 weeks away from the end of the season, so it's currently ongoing. As I mentioned, 90% of the exports are Mingola variety, 5% Panilejo, 4% Key. This is to the US. They do export mangoes to Europe, other varieties. Seasonality starts in February, ends in July, sometimes extends into August. This year it's actually ending a little earlier than usual. And peak season is April through June. And like I said, we're going to get into a little Haiti here. There have been no Haitian mango exports to the United States, or really to anywhere, for the last 3 seasons, almost, since 2022. Basically because of security concerns for both the owners of the farms, groves, and really it's the threat to the USDA inspectors going down and not being able to, basically, just to protect them from being kidnapped or security concerns. We have been trying to get mangoes over here using other treatments, not having to be treated at country of origin. It's a work in progress. We've been working on it for about 3 years. It's difficult to work with people in Haiti, especially since they don't really have a central government at the moment. And the person that needs to sign the paperwork in Haiti is on the terrorist watch list. So it makes it very complicated to get anything done at the moment. Just wanted to show you, this is how they come palletized. These are Mingola mangoes, but this is kind of the final product, and how we receive them here in the States. Process. So they get picked, they get sorted, they get dropped into the sizer. They then go into the hot water treatment plant. This is how they get lowered into the pools. They're in for a minimum of about 40 minutes. And then this picture here is interesting because on this side of this particular plant, you have the line that treats the mangoes or processes the mangoes to go to Europe. Completely open, you just pour them in, they get sorted, packed, and shipped. In the United States, they come in, they get sorted, they get into the hot water treatment. Everything is netted up away, protecting from the flies or any other pests, and everything gets done in a quarantine area. Much easier to ship to Europe than to the US. Then you have to deal with transit times, but that's really the difference at packing. The process to the United States is much more complicated and time consuming, and although hot water treatment is not the best way for mango, it doesn't produce the best mango flavor since you're basically boiling the fruit for about an hour. That's why, as my partner Nick mentioned, a fruit will always be better off the tree in your backyard than if you buy an imported mango at the grocery store. But as you can see, a little bit of the infrastructure. It's pretty well developed. In the Dominican Republic, I think they're up to 6 plants that produce mangoes. 3 are private and then 3 are public. So, I mean, if you get licensing and you have a farm, you can go produce your mangoes and are able to get them going. Questions, please. This is my favorite part. I don't know what you guys know or don't know about the Dominican mangoes. We can go into technicalities, but I'd like to get some feedback or what you want to know. If you varieties, I'm sorry we do not have Dominican or Haitian mangoes here today. I don't know that we'll have tomorrow at the festival. But they are great varieties, and potentially they hope to make one of those top 5 countries, especially the Dominican Republic currently. They do have enough volume to make it into the top 5 or 6 exporting countries in the United States, and that is the goal. We would like to see a variety of not just red and yellow mango at the grocery store. We'd like to see the whole apple section, the Granny Smith, there's 10 green apples, 10 yellow, red apples. We hope to get there with mangoes as well. That's the goal of the Mango Board and everybody, just to increase knowledge and consuming different mangoes. You really, generally the American consumer doesn't know what a real mango tastes like. That's the reality. Any questions? Go ahead.
Within the last several years, U.S. we developing a lot of new variety, and I was wondering, are they attempting down south too? Here? No, Florida? We have a new variety.
In the Dominican Republic, the investment is really on Mingolo right now. There are new farms of Keats and varieties that are going to Europe. But there's people that experiment at their home, but for a commercial, changing the variety, no, they still have to. They haven't reached their potential with what they have yet, so there's no need for them to start kind of experimenting yet at that level, at that commercial level. There's still so much more Mingolo that they can export. All the plants in the Dominican Republic, those pictures that I showed you before, they export 5 to 8 containers a week, I would tell you, out of that plant. But the potential is that they can do double that on a weekly basis. So the infrastructure is there, it's just getting the American consumer. If you bring in if you double the imports into the United States of the Dominican Republic right now, the market would crash. There wouldn't be a way to get rid of all that fruit at a healthy price. It wouldn't be worth it for anybody right now. You got to control the volumes until you have the sales. Anything else? Go ahead.
So first, a comment. For the people who are joining us through the live stream, please feel free to ask questions in the chat and we will get to them. But for you, Luis, you mentioned a lot of varieties. What are the ones that are mainly imported here to the U.S.?
90% of Dominican imports are Mingolo. I think 5% are Banilejo and 5% are Keats. There are some Madame Francine that go out of the Dominican Republic. They haven't figured out how to make it work yet, but there are several farms. They have issues. Fruit looks great at picking and on the tree, but when they go through hot water, they sunken shoulders and all the defects come out. They over the last 3 years, we've attempted, and it's been a nightmare. And realistically, if you ask a Haitian person to taste a Madame Francine from the Dominican Republic, they might throw it back at you. So there's that. The main consumer will refuse to buy a Dominican Madame Francine. Right now, you can probably move them if you get them in, because there are no mangoes from Haiti coming in. So you're kind of plugging the hole in the market. But if Haiti is able to export, there's no reason for there to be a Madame Francine from the Dominican Republic export. It wouldn't make it in the market. Or, I mean, you could sell it, but for a way lower price.
Are they,
And there
sorry.
are zero exports to the United States at the time for the last 3 years from Haiti. I mean, the security situation in Haiti keeps getting worse. We wanted to bring one of the main packers, to speak on Haiti, and he wasn't able to get out of Port-au-Prince since the airport is closed. So we've been trying to get permits and signatures to make it happen so that we can get some Madame Francine from Haiti to the United States via irradiation. But, and we try every year, but we have not been able to yet. Can't get the signatures in the Haiti level to make it work. We can talk about that all day though, but.
If as the meetings progress, you guys have any additional questions, we will have some time for like a little bit of a bigger Q&A towards the end. So please keep your questions down. Thank you so much, Luis. Okay. Right now, I want to invite Armando, who will talk to us about Peru.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Armando Rojas. I'm Commercial Development Director for North America for Campo Sol. And we happen to be one of the many growers of mangoes coming from the wonderful country of Peru. I've been in the company for about 10 years. I'm Costa Rican born and raised, so happy to be in the mango world for the last 8 years, working directly in the farms in Peru, looking the growing side of the experience. And then about 6 years ago that I started managing mangoes here in the United States for sales. So Campo Sol as a company, it's a vertical integrated company that supplies mostly supermarkets all over the world. So that's how far the mangoes or the mangoes from Peru make it all the way to the shelves of the consumers. We put together a little bit of a summary of Peru as a country of origin. All of the information that you're gonna see in the next couple of slides is very summarized, very user-friendly. Just be aware that approximately 90% out of this volume, it's gonna be Kents. The other 10% refers to other varieties like Tommy, Edward, and Palmer, and Ataulfos. But 90% of the volume exported in Peru or from Peru between the months of December all the way to March, it's 90% Kents, which is the red rounded mango variety. That's how most of retailers call it. All right, so to get started, this is information that was provided to us by the Mango Association of Growers in Peru. So pretty much Peru grows mangoes in 3 different regions. Piura, which is the upper north, Lambayeque, and then Ancash, which is a little bit on the south. But if we want to know about volumes, it's massive. So the volumes on the graph that you see at the top, the last 3 seasons, or the last, out of the 4 seasons, at least the 2 previous and this last one have been very, very fruitful, for me to say it that way. Approximately the last season that we just closed in March was 287,000 tons, metric tons. So that's million of kilos. If you multiply that by 2.2, it's gonna be pounds. So that's how much Peru can produce as a country. Now, that tiny little yellow bar that you see on the 2023-2024 season, that was the direct effect of El Niño, specifically in Peru, where we lost approximately 70% of the crop. Even though we lost that much amount of fruit because of weather situations, still companies like Camposol extended and exported and managed 20% of the volume just as a company to export to all the markets. So Camposol just as a company was 25% of the total production of the country. Talking about number of growers. Number of growers is this tiny graph that I have here, or that we brought here. It's a total of 12,200 producers. So it's a big associated compound of growers all across the country. Now, from those 1,200,000, approximately 60% of those growers are in the upper north. So that's where the major production of fruit is. And then from there, you can count on certified growers and no certified growers. Those certified growers are the ones that do have Global GAP and other food safety mandatory certifications for markets like the United States and also Europe. And then other growers that are just growers, not USDA food safety certified. Which is still a pretty in the works scenario in a country like Peru. So then from there, it's important to say how many hectares Peru has reported as of last year into production within the 3 regions. So it's a total of 30,800 hectares. That equals to approximately 70,000 acres. To those that need to relate to acres here in the United States. Now, none of this will be possible without the packing houses. And these 30 packing houses that are reported on the bars on the left, these 30 pack houses are the ones that are spread all across the country to basically process all of the fruit that you see, all of the massive amount of fruit that you get to see on that graph. Now, not all of the packing houses are US certified, and only those that are approximately 56% of the total packing houses are allowed, approved, and certified to export, to treat fruit and export to the United States. And then from there, I'm gonna jump into destinations or markets of destination for the Peruvian fruit as of last year. So over here, it will be important to highlight that 44% of the total fruit of Peru as a country has been exported by sea. And then the remainder of that, it's been pretty much by air, and then just a tiny little bit that we export to countries like Peru by, countries like Chile by land. And United States, it's a big part of the consumption of mangoes from Peru, where a total of 39% of the total volume was exported to the United States, 5% to Canada. Still good market consumption for mangoes, but of course the most important one here, it's the European Union, 41% of the total volume. Then from there we have Britain or the UK, and last but not least, the rest of the world, which considers Latin America, Asia, and other regions. From there, one of the main important things to say is that mangoes, there's no place on earth that mangoes of Peru or mangoes from Peru haven't arrived yet. And the closest that we ship the mangoes, it's Chile, which is right next door to Peru. And the furthest that we have shipped mangoes to can be New Zealand or all the way to China. And then from there, I think that this pretty much summarizes what the Peruvian industry looks like. And I hope that the summary can give you a little bit of visibility on where Peru stands as a country of production, supplying mangoes all over the world. And we're not only known for ceviche, we're also known for very nice and tasty mangoes, which are very highly demanded here by retailers in the United States year by year. The growth, it's been exponential for us in terms of how much of a difference in consumption a good eating or a good piece of eating fruit can make for more consumers to come back to the retailers and ask for more. Thankfully, Camposol and Peru are a major driver of that consumption of mangoes here in the United States. So I was actually pleased to see the numbers that Natalia just shared with us in the market, because we do see and we do feel that year by year. More interest on mangoes. There's actually a very important article that was released recently or a few months ago that even dare to name mangoes as the next avocado in the market in the United States. So let's just hope for the best. And thank you so much for your time. For those of you that never try it, the Peruvian mango ceviche is one of my favorite recipes, so take a look. And thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. Any questions?
There you go. I'll help.
Thank you very much. I would say after last year, I wonder when everyone is going to update the exports of countries from the Western Hemisphere, that Peru actually exported more than Mexico. So Peru just became the biggest export country it will be the biggest export country out of this hemisphere. Not for the United States, because your big market, of course, being Europe. So it's going to change. By next year, Peru will be well above Mexico. So I know I'm being very controversial, but I want to give you guys props. Wonderful.
And just for, if people aren't so familiar with the way that mango imports work, countries like Brazil and Peru, they also send a lot of their, like you mentioned, to Europe. So when we were mentioning Mexico sends most of their mangoes to the US, and then we have countries like Peru and Brazil who have more mangoes that they're sending worldwide. So we might expect to see them, as Dr. Campbell said, but we'll see with the 2025 numbers. Does anyone have any other questions or any comments?
Just one little thing that I wanted to add to that is that I wouldn't be surprised of those numbers jumping up and getting Peru in the top of the list. We already did some of it with blueberries as well. And the only one thing that I can tell you that I will share with you is that we are not stopping the growth. Camposol as a company has extra land to grow. We're looking at expanding. Other people in the area, it's looking into expanding. We have already been reached by breeders with new varieties of mangoes for us to start testing. We do feel and we do see that Kent remains and is the one leading variety that we would like to keep growing with. That is one of the highest demand by retailers and consumers overall here in the United States. So, I mean, the growth, it's not gonna stop. It is not gonna stop. And we see it happening year after year after year. Now comparing mangoes to avocados, promoting for Super Bowl, which was something completely unusual. Now we need to plan promotions and we work with retailers on how to push and sell more mangoes in the middle of the winter, but just right next to avocados for Super Bowl. It's became more famous.
So we have two questions over here.
Yes.
I'm gonna give it to Nick first, and then we're.
Thank you, thank you. Great presentation. We actually import mangoes from Peru, so we're very familiar with the product. But you touched a little bit upon 90% of the mangoes that you currently produce in the country are Kent variety. What are some of the other varieties you guys are considering, not changing the Kents to, but considering and adding acreage? Anything new, anything interesting, anything exciting? Or it's going to be more of like Hayden's, Tommy's, the run-of-the-mill mangoes?
Yeah, so Kent, it's going to be the main variety that we would like to grow. And I'm talking not as a country, but as a company, right? And then based on the amount of fruit that we grow and that we export, that is the one variety that we feel comfortable with, especially because finally, after many years of research and work, the agronomists have really fine-tuned how to produce a really good eating Kent, right? Now, that doesn't mean that there are no other varieties that we are going to test and try. We have our own gardens of varieties that we're testing. Some have been more successful than the others, but still we feel the Kent is going to be the king. And that's from a company perspective.
Do you guys grow any keat or?
As a country, yes, but Camposol, no.
No keat.
No, no keats. We had about 200 acres of Tommy's and we got rid of them. Okay. Yeah, we chopped those trees down and grafted Kent on top of it. And
Good choice.
Now, yeah. Yeah, trust me, working and selling on those Tommy's was a little bit of a challenge, but we still made it happen.
So, given the topography of Peru, is there a band of elevation that you grow at, or you grow at all the elevations? Is there a taste differential from growing in the Andes versus growing down at sea level? Just kind of curious.
Okay, thank you for the question. That's actually very valid. So surprisingly, Peru, one of the peculiarities about Peru, it's Peru growing fruit right in the middle of the desert. So we are growing mangoes at sea level and in the sand, which is something that might look or might sound a little bit crazy for people, but we make it happen. And yes, there's some mangoes in the altitudes, but honestly, Peru, the closer to the ocean, the lower is the land. And so we have seen that the flavor taste profile at the sea level, it's been one of the best, and not less important, the sea level production and the exposure of the sun has a really good direct impact on the color of the mango. And then that blush that it's typical in the Kents, the exposure to the sun and the sea level production does help for a better color on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're still pretty close to Paita, which is the main export port. Sometimes we have to truck the fruit all the way to Callao, depending on what destination we're going to have, especially now with China and Chancay port, that it's going to take us to China in 26 to 28 days, direct service. But yes, the main port, Paita, is the one that is the closest to the operation. Yeah.
And just to add to that, where you guys are close to the desert, there's a huge water reservoir,
yes,
which adds to the ability of them to have such a big agricultural center.
Yeah.
In that area of Peru.
Yeah, the access to water is something that Peru is privileged with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that water travels around 500 kilometers, all the way from the Andes to our fields.
Mm-hmm. We have an additional question over here.
I think the same question I was asked. I want to know what makes the Kent mango special in Peru. You mentioned the terrain and the proximity to the ocean. Is that what it is? And the second part of it is, how do you guarantee the quality of your product? What are your quality control practices?
Okay, so yes, the proximity to ocean, the soil, the sand, even if you believe it or not, the sand, all of those things do help for a better, higher eating profile on the Kents. Buyers travel there and they can hardly believe how much of a massive production we have in the middle of the desert. But that's what happens. And it's a secret of Mother Nature that we can decipher very well, but at the same time, agronomists have literally done a lot of work, a lot of research to really get the fruit to the point where it is right now. And then quality, like everything else, quality is subject to Mother Nature. We, let's say, in a good way, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But year by year, Peruvian mangoes keep positioning themselves as one of the best eating piece of fruit in the markets.
We have another question over here.
Maybe I missed it, but I was just curious, what exactly is Campo Sol, and like what do you do as a business there?
Yeah, of course, I'll be happy to help to guide you on that. So Campo Sol it's a Peruvian-based company. It's a family-owned business. We're a vertically integrated company, and mangoes is one out of our 6 products. We grow blueberries, avocados, citrus, grapes, cherries, and mangoes. Mangoes is one of our important products. We have around 1,200 acres of mangoes in Peru. We still have another, would say, 400 acres of expansion plans for more mangoes, but that's not happening yet. And the reason why Campo Sol is a vertically integrated company, it's pretty much because besides being a grower, we have worked directly with the markets to come and establish our operations in the main markets. We have a sales office here in Fort Lauderdale, and that's where I've been based for the last 8 years. We have another office in Rotterdam that manages the European market and the Middle East. And we have also a commercial office in Shanghai where we manage the sales for China and the Pacific, Southeast Asia markets. So we happen to be one of the many 30,000 growers that I just showed you, but Campo Sol is within the top 10 of the biggest growers in Peru. Yeah. And all of these statistics that I have shared with you are Peruvian mango industry overall. These are not Campo Sol specifics. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any additional questions? Perfect. Thank you so much, Armando.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you, everybody.
To have Dick Bernal talking to us about Jamaica.
Is this one working? Okay. Is this the internet? Where's the internet? Is this the internet? I'm not very good with technology. Sorry, technical difficulties. Oh, perfect. Thank God for the youth. I'm 37, but I feel like I'm 87. I'm not really good with technology, but my name's Nick Bernal, Seasons Farm Fresh. Our original speaker is actually detained, not in an illegal way, but she's just not able to make it. We've had a very rough Jamaican mango season, so I'm filling in, no presentation, just ad-libbing this whole thing last minute, but I'll try my best. Jamaicans are some of the most passionate people, I would say even rivaling the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Southeast Asians in their love of mangoes. I was told a very long time ago by a Jamaican woman that if you're told that she loves you like mango, you have something really special to hold on to. So in 2004, Jamaica began the process working with the USDA in order to gain market access for mangoes, which was one of the biggest products that the diaspora here has been clamoring for. Because the Jamaican diaspora in the US, I believe, is between 2 and 3 million people, and mangoes are such an essential part of their culture that it became just something almost political, where prime ministers were negotiating with presidents and ambassadors with ambassadors. So between 2004 and 2019, it took quite a bit of time in order to actually get market access for the fruit. And our company was the first company to import Jamaican mangoes into the US in 2019. In our introductory season, we did about 2,000 cases, and I'll go a little bit more into the varieties. But I just wanted to show you a map of Jamaica, same thing that Louis did. I like, and our previous speaker from Campo Sol, just so people have an idea of the geography where the mangoes are. A majority of the mangoes, I would say 80% of the mangoes that are grown in Jamaica are grown in this belt right here to the east of Kingston, so in the St. Thomas Parish, pretty much from Bull Bay all the way down to Port Morant, and they go from the coast. I mean, we have some of our farms are literally 100 yards from the coast all the way up into the hills. So you have a pretty wide range of mango farms in that part of Jamaica. They also grow them in St. Catherine. There's some mango farms on the north coast. Those are mostly Tommy and Keats. But almost all of our export mangoes come from the St. Thomas region. And the same as in the Dominican Republic, like what Luis was mentioning. You have this mountain range right here that kind of makes it a little bit more arid, so much better for growing the mangoes. The varieties of mangoes that are grown in Jamaica, there's probably 100, 200 varieties, but the three most exported ones would be the St. Julian or the Julie mango, which many of our nursery people here are familiar with, the East Indian, and the Bombay. Gary Zill spoke earlier about the Bombay mango and his iterations, all the cross hybridization and all the things that they've done with the Bombay mango. That's probably the preferred mango by Jamaicans. The way that I've seen them eat it, they actually freeze it, they'll cut it in half and they'll put ice cream. It's a very popular way to eat it, but it's an amazing tasting mango. The St. Julian, the Julie mango is a nice mango. Some of the nurserymen here have done Super Julies and a bunch of different iterations of that mango. But by far, I think the most demanded mango, at least on the commercial side, from us being non-Jamaicans and what the Jamaicans call us for at 2 o'clock in the morning when the shipment's delayed, is the East Indian, which is, in my opinion, very similar to a Madame Francine mango. It's a yellow mango, it's fibrous, but it's extremely sweet, brixing in the low to mid-20s. Amazing mango. But what's interesting about the Jamaican mango landscape is that I would say it's very similar, more similar to Florida than the other presentations that we've had. You go to Ecuador, you go to Peru, you go to Brazil, you go to Dominican Republic, Mexico, it's large orchards, 50 acres, 100 acres, 1,000 acres. In Jamaica, it's still very niche, family farms. I've seen half acre to 5 acres, I'd say would be your average. So in order for us to export mangoes, we have to collect from 10, 20, 30, 40 farms at a time with varying levels of quality, which makes it a little bit difficult to do this process. But the demand is so huge, we're never able to fully meet the demand. The highest export season that we had was 2 years ago. We exported 20,000 boxes in the season, which is typically May, June, and parts of July. Jamaica has a gigantic problem with fruit fly. So the USDA kind of regulates. We have all the farms trapped and monitored. So we start as early as we can, like around May when there's volume, and then we'll continue that all the way until basically the fruit fly populations are too high in certain areas. They cut off the exports, which just happened, and then we get a lot of angry calls from Jamaican customers. You can ask my brother, you can ask us, somehow they get our numbers and they call us at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, like asking where the mangoes are. Old ladies call me from churches in Brooklyn, and everybody wants these mangoes. I mean, it's very, very passionate. And I know the Indians and the Pakistanis are very similar in the way that they love mangoes, but this is, for us, a brand new experience. So we're growing the Jamaican mango in the United States. The goal is to continue to get more people planting. The government has initiated a project in Clarendon, so they're trying to put down 200 or 300 acres of a pure stand of East Indian and Julie mangoes. Hopefully that will, in the next 2-3 years, that'll be into full production and we'll have access to more mangoes. But for now, it's a very artisanal business, similar to Haiti and similar to Florida, where we're collecting mangoes to kind of make enough to have these shipments. All of the mangoes are allowed in under irradiation, which is probably, besides India and Pakistan, this is one of the biggest sources of irradiated mangoes into the U.S. Our friends over here at Campo Sol, all of their mangoes that come to us are hot water treated, I'm sure. The Mingolos are all hot water treated. Mexican mangoes, a majority of them are hot water treated. Irradiation, for me, I'm a big fan of irradiation. We've been doing it for over 10 years. And it sounds scarier than it is. People hear the word irradiation and they think you bite into the mango and you're going to turn green like the Incredible Hulk and grow a third arm. But it's basically, the new technology is now X-rays, so it's similar to an airport scanner. pallets go through, the mangoes are treated at a dosage determined by the USDA in order to mitigate the fruit fly, not kill it, but actually sterilize it. And what it does is it allows us to pick a mango closer to ripeness. So closer to that homegrown, you touch the fruit on the tree and you eat it like that. Whereas hot water treatment, the fruit is essentially being boiled. It's much cheaper and much easier treatment. I mean, the radiation is a huge pain right now because we don't have an irradiation center in Miami yet. But at certain price points, like for the Indian and the Pakistani mangoes, the Jamaican mangoes, the Thai mangoes, the consumers who are generally from that ethnic group are willing to pay the premium for those mangoes. So irradiation is our best option. The goal is, like I said, we're trying to increase the production 30,000 boxes in the scheme of what Ecuador does and what Mexico does is nothing. But the demand, not just with the diaspora, but also we've worked with American supermarkets. Wegmans has had Julie mangoes for the past few years, and it seems like the American palate is really enjoying these type of specialty mangoes, and we're hoping that we can continue to work with the 3 varieties there, but also some other varieties that we're experimenting with in Jamaica and get these out onto the market. That's pretty much my summary. If anybody has any questions.
Well, I do have a question.
Sure.
What would you think is the biggest hurdle to overcome for Jamaica to increase their export volumes to the U.S.?
The farms are very small, so it's extremely expensive to go and collect the fruit. But also the demand internally for the Jamaican mangoes is very high, and they pay a premium price. We also have to compete against the UK market, the Canadian market. So this price that already exists in the market, before we showed up, the price was already high. And now we're adding increased competition, so the price has steadily been climbing. And it seems like thus far the diaspora has been willing to pay the price. So the only really way to mitigate that is to get more acreage planted. And mango, unfortunately, is not a short-term crop. It's a 5-year investment, 8-year investment. I mean, I know the trees can bear 3 years, but really 5 to 8 years before you're in commercial production. So a lot of people don't have access to capital in Jamaica. You might have the land, but unless you have the money to put the trees in, the money to clear the land, the money to maintain the land, and then wait 5 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years before you see a dime, it's difficult. So older farmers are not investing in it. The government hopefully has an initiative. This initiative is going to work and get a few hundred acres into production, and that will allow us to bring in a hot water treatment plant, allow us to lower the cost, ship by sea, do all these things so that we can make it more accessible.
About 10 years ago, during the growers conference here, I recall a gentleman from Jamaica was here speaking about mango culture in Jamaica. And one of the things I recall about what he said was that at some point in the 1980s, they planted a significant amount of acreage of Tommy Atkins in Jamaica, and that they actually failed to fruit well. They had a serious problem with production with Tommy Atkins in Jamaica. Guess not adapted to the climate and the zone and all this. So my question is there any interest among Jamaican growers in growing anything beyond the standard Jamaican varieties, Julie, East Indian, number 11, so forth? Or is that all they want to grow and produce?
Good question. I've been to some of those farms. I think, Richard, you've been to some of those farms in the north. I've been to a farm with 50 acres of Tommies, and they produce worse than these trees here in Pinecrest that are 80 years old. The government just had this idea that, hey, we want to compete, so let's grow what the American market wants, which is Tommies. Huge fail. That government was voted out and cost millions and millions of dollars. But to answer your question, no. They want to grow what the diaspora, because you have to think about it from their point of view. Every mango that they produce, they could sell to me to go to the U.S., they could sell to somebody going to Canada, the U.K., or they could just sell it in Coronation Market in Kingston. So there's some growers that have tried other varieties. I've seen a variety that's being popularized now called Trinigram. It's not big acreage, but I am seeing some of it being planted. It's a good eating mango, but it's just not known. I've brought it up here, and we've tried to sell it to the diaspora. They don't know what it is. So most growers that I know, if anybody's putting in acreage, it's all Bombay, Julie,
so
East Indian.
if they're growing Bombays, Julies, East Indians, what kind of yield per hectare are they getting?
They have no idea.
They have no idea.
No.
Okay.
They couldn't. I could go to a farmer that I've been buying from for 10 years, and I was there 3 weeks ago. How many mangoes do you have? How many mangoes are you going to produce? He doesn't keep records. They weigh the mangoes out, we buy them, pay them in cash, and we're on our way. So and he's a bigger grower. He has 10 acres. That's the problem in Jamaica. These small farmers are not they're full-time farmers, but they're not professionalized. It's not, Campo Sol or Cerulli Bro. I mean, you guys have packing houses and acreage and Global Gap and food safety audits. These guys just, they don't care because they don't need to. Somebody's always there with cash in hand. And until that changes, until they have too many mangoes they can't sell, I don't think that culture is going to change. I hope it changes, but I'm just, a little leering of what's going to happen in Jamaica. I mean, instrumenting any change there is very difficult. That number 11 is a great mango, though, but we don't export it. It turns black too quickly. The Blackie, the number 11. Yeah.
I'm just curious, between the hot water treatment and the irradiation of the mangoes coming in, is there any difference, or what is the difference that it impacts on the quality of the mangoes, the flavor and the texture specifically?
It's not even comparable. I mean, I'm not, our friends here are big hot water advocates, and look, hot water is much easier, it's much cheaper, but irradiation is just, for me, it's night and day. I mean, the quality of the mango, because you can pick it closer to the maturity index that you want to have in the mango. Obviously, like Luis said, like we all said, I'm born and raised down here. I grew up picking mangoes every June and July in my backyard. If you live in Wisconsin, you don't have that luxury, maybe with apples, but not with mangoes. So we want to give that experience to our customers, and especially with the ethnic communities. If you're from India or you're from Pakistan and you're used to eating a mango like that, and then we take that Kesar or that Alfonso or the East Indian Julie and you hot water treat it, it's not going to taste like what you want it to. And the expenses and the logistics of bringing them are so high that, I mean, an average mango, Tommy could sell for $3, $4, $5 for a 4-kilo box. The Indian boxes are 3 kilos and they sell for $30, $40, $50. The Jamaican mango is $40, $50. So you're asking 10, 15x of a normal mango. It better give you 10, 15x of that experience. Part of our success, I started this business selling lychees out of the back of my car at the University of Miami to help fund for my books. But part of the success of what I learned in the fruit business, and I'm sure Richard and a lot of you guys can attest to this, is that yes, we're selling a commodity, yes, we're selling fruit, but we're also selling a memory, we're selling a vision. And I've been in New York. When we brought the first shipments there, we were there with the Minister of Agriculture, and there was an old lady, she was 87 years old, and she hadn't been to Jamaica in 50 years, and she ate that mango, she started crying, and I'm like, oh God, I hope I didn't poison her. I don't have that much liability insurance. And I asked her what's wrong. She said, I haven't eaten this mango since I was under my grandmother's tree, and she gave me this whole story about how it was so integrated in their culture. And I've talked to Pakistanis, I've talked to Indians and Southeast Asians. So this is really a part of their culture. And for me, it goes back to your point, my point about the irradiation. I mean, I think irradiation is more, the facilities are much more expensive to set up. However, the quality of the fruit that you can actually get through the process is far superior, because hot water treatment, you have to pick the fruit a little under what we would, as mango lovers and experts, what we would want. But it's the only way to move the volume, because when you have 14,000 acres of mangoes, you got to pump the volume through, because that's the only way to make money. We're focused on smaller volumes, smaller communities, niche volumes, but just getting a very high quality product to the market.
I'll add a little bit to that sort of debate between irradiated and hot water treated. And something that's important to know is that they both require best management practices, right? You need to know how to properly hot water treat your mangoes and how to properly irradiate them as well, because you could cause more damage with either or, right? So it's very important that the people who are doing it properly. The thing with irradiated mangoes compared to hot water treated mangoes is that some varieties don't really take well to hot water treatment. For example, when we were talking about DR, there are certain varieties that can't be brought just because it's very difficult to hot water treat them, right? They can cause a lot of damage. So in certain cases, it is a lot better to do irradiation. But something that we are noticing, and this is just talking about Mexico, is that the amount of mangoes that are irradiated have been increasing, right? Yeah. So for this year, we actually project about 8 million boxes of irradiated mangoes compared to, let's say, 4 million in 2023. 2022, yeah. Right? A
lot of the out of Mexico, a lot of the baby mangoes, the green mangoes, the Thai mangoes, those type of varieties are all coming irradiated because you can maintain the texture of the mango.
Yeah, so I have a little different take on hot water treatment. Okay, so again, it's the same thing of if you have to do something for a quarantine treatment, because that's what both the hot water and the irradiation were made for, was for quarantine treatment for fruit flies and for seed weevil, okay? So you're gonna have to do it. You should turn it to your benefit. So hot water treatment is what makes, so I manage a lot of acreage in Mexico of Ataulfo, but I don't sell a single Ataulfo in the United States. So once we take it and run it through our control points in the field, from the field to the packing house to the marketing to all the way through, it comes out as a champagne. And hot water treatment is one of those control points, because we turn it into a positive, not a negative. So if you have ever eaten an Ataulfo in Mexico that hasn't gone through hot water, it is a different tasting fruit. It changes the flavor. It makes the flavor more, to use a marketing term, more regal. It softens the flavor, because Ataulfo is actually a very strong mango.
It's acidic, yeah.
Yeah, but when you go through hot water, it softens that, and it makes it again, and it changes the ripening, and it changes a lot of the things you do. So we set up our system based on that. As a company, we actually don't do irradiation, not because, well, we don't do irradiation for a couple reasons, but one of the main problems with irradiation is you can pick a mango at this big, when it normally would be that big, and you can irradiate it, and it'll sit on the shelf and turn into a mummy, okay? So the problem is it allows people to cheat. It allows the industry to cheat. That is what we have consideration from, and to put that mango onto a market that'll never ripen. You can't do that with hot water. So hot water is actually another control point that we make sure to control our growers, so they won't sell us immature fruit, because it won't work, right? But you can do it with irradiation. And that is the actual problem that I have with irradiation for the United States, is of the 4 million boxes that were irradiated in Mexico this year, how many of those were mature? I'm gonna leave it up to you to decide, but it's not a lot of them. So, and I'm not, again, I'm not busting on any single company in the way anybody does anything. I'm just saying that these things were, hot water and irradiation were not created to make a mango better or make a mango worse. They were created to control a pest. And it's one of the greatest things. And so I'm in all favor of hot water treatment and irradiation, because it protects us as growers here. And I've gotten into trouble in Mango Board before when I've always said that, I like quarantine protocols on countries that are exporting mangoes, because I want to be able to grow my mangoes and eat my mangoes from my yard and all that, and not have fruit fly. So, and then have another thing we have to breed for, so, because fruit fly resistance would really be the holy grail, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll comment on Dr. Campbell's, everybody has an opinion, and I think hot water treatment, right, left up to the industry or to the importers, we wouldn't do either. But as the USDA, it's safeguarding American agriculture, and that's fine. I think that there's an art to hot water treatment, there's an art to irradiation, because I've had a lot of hot water treated mangoes that were garbage, and I've had ones that are very good. The same thing, irradiation can do, it works both ways. So you have to really, somebody mentioned, I think you mentioned best practices. You really have to work with the growers to improve best practices. Certain mangoes won't make it through. The mango de azúcar from Colombia, we started that program a few years ago. The mango's the size of an egg. You can't hot water treat that mango. It'll be mush. So certain mangoes have to make it through the irradiation process. And as Richard mentioned, a majority of the mangoes that are being irradiated out of Mexico are baby mangoes, green mangoes, mangoes that aren't intended to mature. We bring in the Q Savoy variety, the crunchy Thai mango, as it's called on the marketplace, and that's all irradiated out of Mexico, because the market prefers that over hot water treatment for that variety. In the Ataulfo, you guys have developed the champagne, and you have a process to do that comes out better, potentially, than what the Ataulfo is in Mexico. So I think it's the variety, it's the plant that does it. It's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration. But both of them are valid treatments, and I just think irradiation is here to stay. We're hoping that the Mango Board allocates some resources to do some research and development because irradiation isn't going away. And as these centers start popping up in more ports of entry, we're going to see more and more mangoes being irradiated. Also, irradiation, in order to hot water treat, you have to have a USDA inspector on site. In places like Haiti, which my colleague mentioned, that's not currently possible. So we're hoping that in the next season we'll be able to pull those mangoes out and do the quarantine treatment here in the States, but that remains to be seen.
Anybody did a nutritional analysis
Yes.
on both sides?
No, the treatments don't change the nutritional.
Talking about especially worry about the radiations. Is any like all the vitamins and stuff like that? Is
No,
still-
so the misconception with the radiation is that it's somehow, obviously, yes, you are all the same thing with hot water treatment. You're altering the mango. Hot water treatment does it a certain way by exposing it to temperature over a certain time with a desired effect of mitigating seed weevil and fruit fly. Irradiation is also mitigating seed weevil and fruit fly, but irradiation, the studies that they've done, there is no once you take it out of the process, which now the irradiation plants have gone from gamma to E-beam, they've gone to X-ray. So like I mentioned, the irradiation technology that exists now that's being used in this country, for the most part, there's older plants that are still using gamma. It has gone to X-ray, which is basically a big airport scanner that you put the fruit through. It gets hit with electronic beams, no radioactive material, and then the fruit passes through to the other side. So they've done nutritional analysis on mangoes, on guavas, on many things that are commonly irradiated. There's no difference. There's no radioactive residue. It's just a consumer preference. That's the biggest thing. We bring in irradiated fruit from South Africa, lychees. We bring in irradiated guavas. We bring in probably 15 items that are irradiated throughout the year, and mangoes from 6 different countries that are irradiated. So once the consumers are a little bit more educated, I think you'll see hot water treatment is going to be here forever, as far as I can see it, and it's the cheapest and easiest way to do it to move the volume. But irradiation with these specialty mangoes, I think you're going to see it grow. She said it went from 4 million to 8 million. I think every year it's just going to be increasing, and as consumers become more aware, you can make your choice. Do you want a red apple or a green apple? I mean, you'll have a mango that's hot water treated and a mango that's irradiated. And some varieties, hot water treatment is probably a preferred treatment, and some varieties, irradiation is a preferred treatment.
I did in the past make the rootstock out of a water treatment. Mangoes. I guess you cannot use that radiated mango seed as a rootstock at all.
I don't think so, no.
I guess it's not going to sprout.
I can't confirm or deny. I've never tried it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you so much,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Okay, so now we have our final speaker for this session, which is Dr. Campbell, who will be talking to us about Mexico mangoes. Okay.
No, I don't have any. Oh, yeah, you can pull up a map of Mexico. Yeah. Nathalia's disappointed because I didn't have a presentation, so she's going to make my presentation better. It's all good. But yes, you can pull that. Perfect. All right, so it was very interesting what we've been talking about so far. Mine will be a little bit different. So I work for Cerulli Brothers. Cerulli Brothers, we're one of the top 3 mango importation companies in the United States. We're number 1 out of Mexico, 1 or 2 out of Mexico every year. We bring in about 13, 14 million boxes, 10-pound boxes of mangoes a year. All right, so we grow, if you look at the map, so the Mexican mango industry basically occurs on the Pacific coast all the way up here to northern Sinaloa. All right, it starts down here in Chiapas, in the beginning of February, and then moves to, actually Oaxaca and Chiapas start about the same time, then it goes up to Guerrero, Michoacan, Jalisco, and then moves on up, and we go into Nayarit, and we end up over here in Sinaloa. This is Mazatlan and all through there, and then we get up to Los Mochis. Los Mochis is a fly-free zone, but everything south of Los Mochis, you have to do hot water treatment. I'm just going to say one more thing about hot water treatment, okay? And that is that without hot water treatment, it is, so for instance, Los Mochis here is a fly-free zone. They don't have to hot water treat. So because of it, they don't have the discipline to do the things right sometimes. And so one of the biggest things that we did when we started growing in Los Mochis for Cerulli Brothers is we put in our own hot water treatment even though we don't have to. So we do it in order to be prepared for when the USDA shuts down Los Mochis' fly-free zone. And why are they going to do that? Because one of these days they're going to find fruit fly in Los Mochis because they are now bringing fruit from the south and treating it in Los Mochis and then sending it to the United States that way. I'm sorry, they're bringing the fruit from the south and they're taking it up to Los Mochis and they're doing it for fresh cut, where they're then going to take it to the United States. So they're going to get fruit fly up in Los Mochis. Now, you want to talk about a desert, by the way. Los Mochis is a real desert. But it's going to eventually happen, and this is a big mistake for them to make. But that's just a little, it's going to happen pretty soon here, we think. Now, Mexico, I was talking about the difference between what Peru, so Peru, they just showed that they did 63 million boxes on those data that we just saw there a minute ago, okay, out of Peru. 63 million export boxes out of Peru in 2025. Mexico has done right now 55 million. And Los Mochis is not going to beat them. So this year, 2025, Peru will export more mangoes than Mexico out of this hemisphere. You can publish it now, Ramon. I'm telling you, you can publish it now. It's not going to happen. There's not 10 million boxes left in Los Mochis. So that's going to change things. Now, that doesn't mean to the United States, okay, because Peru only sends half of their production here. They send the other half to Europe, or more than the other half to Europe. So Mexico is more important for the U.S. market. Mexico is the U.S. market. And I also want to give why do we all eat mangoes? We eat mangoes for the sugar, okay? If anyone ever tells you they eat mangoes to lose weight, they're lying, okay? You eat mangoes because they are sweet and you like the taste of them. Now, we eat mangoes here in Florida because we have all sorts of crazy flavors and all that sort of stuff, but the main consumer in the United States is deciding whether they like mangoes on bricks, on sugar level. Sugar and acid ratio, but bricks is really the driver of that. The greatest study that was ever done by the National Mango Board was they went out and bought mangoes in a grocery store every week of the year, and they measured bricks. And the only times that the U.S. consumer got a mango above 16% bricks was for 1 month out of Peru in March, and from May through early July out of Mexico. Every other parts of the time of the year, they never got a mango above 16% bricks. Well, I'm looking, and you know, Dale's gonna say 16% bricks, I wouldn't eat that thing. Well, right? None of us would eat a mango or think a mango was good if it was 16% bricks. But if you're in Minnesota, 16% bricks is considered pretty good, okay? Because Go, if you ever want to test Brix level in mangoes, just do another test. Go out and buy peaches and try to eat peaches with mangoes together. Can't do it. Peaches taste like acid when they're next to a mango. The only fruit that you can ever mix that have a higher Brix than a mango in a grocery store is in the store right now, and that's cherries. Cherries are sweeter than mangoes, almost always, right? So if you want to make a salad, and I don't mean for homegrown stuff, I agree with you. I can see your face. I know what you're doing. I know what you're thinking. We always made, the only fruit salad you can mix when you want to mix fruit together are mangoes, Bing cherries, and bananas. Those are the only things that have Brix that are similar and combine perfectly. Any other fruit salad out there, big mistake. Unless you want to add orange juice to your mango fruit salad, but orange juice normally has added sugar when you get it. Not always. You shouldn't, but it can. So anyway. Well, dates, but who makes a mango? Yeah, okay, you care. Dates, yes, absolutely. Dates would be. And grapes nowadays, you can find grapes that'll get there. But when I was a kid, grapes wouldn't even work in most of them. But now with a lot of the new grape cultivars, you can do it. But anyway, so the mangoes grown up here on the Pacific coast. Mexico's industry, it's about 40% Tommy Atkins, 40% Ataulfo, about 15% Kent, and then about 1% Hayden, and then 0.5% of everything else, okay? That's really the Mexican mango industry. Now, Ataulfo may almost always now will beat the Tommy numbers in the end, but it just depends. Now, if you want to talk about specialty varieties out of Mexico, so I started at Cerulli Brothers 20 some years ago. And when I was at Cerulli Brothers, I worked in the Champagne Mango program, and that is still the only successful trademarked mango in the United States market, okay? Many other people are trying to trademark mangoes now, but none of them so far have been successful. The other mango that should be trademarked is a Kent. I would love to have a trademark Kent mango. But in order to do that, you would have to control all of the points through the production, just like we do with Ataulfo. And you would have to have the aha moment on storage, on the right growers, on the right location, the right market, the right retailer, okay? Retailers, if any of y'all think, maybe y'all have industries and that you talk to retailers and they listen to you, but retailers don't listen to exporters a whole lot, right? So what dictates what we do is what the retailer pays us for. All right, so we can talk all about mango flavors and all new varieties and all that sort of stuff. If no one wants to buy it, my company is not going to grow it, and we're not going to spend that money on it, right? That's just the bottom line. So if we could make Kent into a specialty mango, that should be the next specialty mango out of Mexico. And then we would partner with Peru and have a good mango in the United States all through the year. Guess what? There is a place that we talk about when we dream about marketing of stuff, of where that has happened. What place am I speaking of? Europe, right? Can't sell Tommy Atkins in Europe. You can only sell Kents and other specialty mangoes. Europe will not take Tommies. Most of Europe, Western Europe. Some parts of Europe will take Tommies. But in general, that's why Peru controls Europe, because of that. So That's what we would love to do with varieties. But since we don't, and we can't get Kent yet, what's the next big specialty variety in mangoes out of Mexico is really new, innovative, cutting-edge mango called Hayden. Hayden, there are 2.5 million boxes of Hayden sold in the United States every year. 2.5 million boxes that we bring into the United States, all right? Now, Hayden, of course, selected in 1910 here in Florida, and we don't consider that a new variety. If we were Indians, we would say that's a new variety, but we're not. We're from Florida, so, you know, our history is not quite as long. But yeah, Hayden is still brought in 2.5 million boxes because of the aroma, the attractiveness. The only problem is Haydens are 12 counts. They're too small. If a Hayden was a 10 count, there'd be 10 million Haydens sold in the United States if it was a bigger mango. Because retailers don't want those small 12 count mangoes. 12s and 14 count mangoes are the death for us if you want to go into chain stores, okay? And when you're talking about chain stores, there are chain stores and there are chain stores, okay? The chain stores that matter, if you want to sell volume, if you sell volume like we do, we're talking about, you have to have, you know, you're talking about Walmart, Kroger, you know, that kind of level right there. And those guys don't pay you because, again, we can say a lot of things. All mangoes have the proper size to be the best quality of that variety, right? So a Kent is an 8 count. An 8 count Kent is the perfect size to buy. But you try to convince a retailer of that. They don't, because they're not looking at it for what I think is the best way it tastes or the right density. Okay? Because don't get me wrong, I am a dyed-in-the-wool crazy person about mangoes and mango quality. All right? I eat, when we talk about per capita consumption of 3.7 mangoes per year, I was telling Julian, that's about that's like a morning for me. Maybe not even all the way through the morning, okay? I'm going to eat more mangoes than that in the morning. You know, come on, 3.7 mangoes eaten in a year? That's insanely stupid. I'm sorry. U.S. consumers don't know anything about eating fruit if they are only eating that amount. I think that's great, and I know it's gone up. But the bottom line is, I eat a lot of mangoes, okay? And I know what the right size is and what they should taste like. And that's the other thing that all of it is. If you're talking about specialty varieties, they don't care what I think. Just cares what the consumer thinks. And I always let the consumer decide what they want to decide, right? So we were talking, so Hayden is the number one. Now the next biggest specialty mango out of Mexico now is Cayo Savoy. Now Cayo Savoy is not, you know who the biggest marketer of Cayo Savoys in the United States is? It's us. It's Cerulli Brothers. But you don't know that because none of that stuff ever enters onto a USDA statistic. I mean, it enters on the statistic as coming into the country, but it's not going into chain stores. None of that is chain business. That is all going to wholesalers in the United States. Wholesalers in Vancouver, in Pikes Market, in the Bay Area, in LA, in Houston, in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, and in New York. And if you want to keep the price, you can send a load and a half into them a week. You go more than that, and the price falls. That's the size of the market right now for that. We don't bring in irradiated, and we had to work tirelessly to teach the guys. First, we had to figure out how to hot water treat them, and that was the other point I wanted to make about hot water treating that I couldn't remember. Okay. Any mango can be hot water treated. It's just figuring it out. We were looking at pictures of grafting mangoes over here in George Salon and doing budding of mango trees, right? For a couple thousand years, all mangoes were inarched. And then someone figured out how to do budding. And now, it's like falling off a truck, right? Yeah, it's always been that way. Well, it's the same way with hot water treatment. Nobody could hot water treat Ataulfo because they were too small. Well, we hot water treat a lot of Ataulfo. And any variety can be hot water treated. You just have to figure out how to do it. Okay? So, Kale Savoy comes in. Right now, there's probably about 300,000 boxes of Kale Savoy imported in the United States from Mexico. And there is a good percentage of that is irradiated. And the irradiated stuff, there's also a big amount that goes into Canada, irradiated. Next biggest variety is Malacca, okay? Malacca, we took Malacca into Mexico back about 25 years ago. And Malacca is now sent into the US market and that's a big mango in LA. So if you're in LA and you go through those markets, you'll find Malacca all over the place. But again, not crossing into retail. A little bit. And when I say retail, I mean, again, Wegmans and things like that, they understand, right? They get it. It's really easy to work. I mean, not easy, but you can talk to them about varieties. The next one is Totopori. All right? Hey, man, we'll sell anything if you can do it. But Totopori, Gary mentioned growing Totopori. Totopori grows and fruits very, very well in Mexico. And so Totopori, we import a considerable number of loads of Totopori a year. And they take the hot water treatment beautifully. So they come in and they look great, and you can sell them they have a big following in certain markets. The big thing going on in varieties in Mexico is genetic prospecting companies trying to find the next Honeycrisp apple, okay? They're looking for a mango, but they're using that idea. They're all looking for the next Honeycrisp, okay? They all want to find that holy grail variety that they're going to be able to come into the US market with. So you hear in the last couple years, there's a mango called Cancun, splashed all over but it's spelled with 2 K's instead of 2 C's. It's Cancun with K-A-N-K, K-U-N, yeah. I didn't make it up. I know a lot of people accuse me of making up silly names, but I did not make that up, okay. And the other one is cherry. You see that one. And the trouble is, with all of these are being bought up by producer groups and companies specifically, and they're trying to market them to break into this and get this kind of the avalanche, to get an avalanche going on new varieties. The real problem, or the challenge is the US consumer, to your question, Nick, is the US consumer going to get on board with that idea? My biggest challenge in life is that I got to sit down with chain stores and I just get blank looks when I talk about this, okay? So, you will excuse me when I'm sometimes a little reserved and I'm afraid to express my opinion, because you go into these places and you sit down with a Walmart or someone like that and start talking about varieties, okay? And you're lucky if they give you 5 seconds, all right? But they all want to talk about it, but they say, when they finish the conversation, the next thing they say is always, okay, let's do something. We need 20 loads a week starting tomorrow, right? These guys, so again, in my other life, I live in Homestead, and these guys from all of these major chain stores come and eat mangoes on my porch. And I take them out and we eat mangoes, and they go, oh my God. And the owners of Cerulli Brothers have told me, says, Richard, if you do that again, you know, you are making these guys crazy. And because then they get crazy. They don't know what to do, right? And that is the real issue. You can't, that's why I want to do a Kent. Because with a Kent, I know I can get those loads of mangoes to go in there. Because otherwise, you have to start and build a program. And costs are costs. Everything is expensive, no matter where you are, not only in Jamaica. Everywhere else it's expensive to make a mango program. So if you're going to start a specialty mango variety, it's very hard to do that in a country like Mexico, because the retailers aren't speaking the same language, right? Who's going to take that risk? So you all know, I mean, so, you know, there are companies doing this, right? But most of those companies are no longer farmers because it's too hard to be a farmer, right? I mean, for those of us who actually grow mangoes and do it, right? Because if you want to go, I work with all these guys in Mexico. Do you want to know how many of those guys have ever been into their fields? They don't know their fields. I know their fields. I know their fields because I go there every year. I have to change my name and everything else so that I can get out of there, you know, that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is I know their fields, and I'm a mango grower. I've been a mango grower my whole life. These people aren't mango growers. What they are is businessmen, right? And that's the problem. How do you connect those two things? That's really what I spend my time trying to do. So it's a kind of that's really, you know, right now, when is the next aha moment? When is the cotton candy grape going to occur? When is any of those things going to occur? When's it going to happen, right? That's the real question. That's the real question. Right now, I don't see anything really on the horizon because we are actually, all the mangoes that we talk about, the cotton candies and all of those things, they're incredible flavored mangoes. But they have there's dozens and dozens of other things that would have to be taken into account in order to commercially grow them, you know, on a big scale, right? And that's what I will make a confession that's what I quit worrying about. I just quit worrying about it, and we'll do that, and one day it'll happen, because I figure I'm not going to be able to control it anyway. That one day somebody's going to figure this out. Now, the big point is the Build-A-Bear concept, when they start to be able to actually build the genetics up on something, and you get someone who's crazy like me and wants to actually do something and say that, okay, making some wild flavors is better than making something boring, that's going to be when I think it's going to change. When you have something on the market that is totally novel and totally different. But right now, you're talking about 60 million boxes out of Mexico, 60 million boxes out of Peru. And the problem with all of those things is that there are times of the year there aren't enough ships in the world to carry all those mangoes from Peru around the world to get to the markets they need to get to. There aren't enough trucks to come up from Mexico to get all those mangoes across that border. When the commercial mango industry is more about logistics than it is about eating mangoes. It's a lot more fun being a specialty mango grower in Florida. And I think there's more future to be a specialty mango. I know I'm supposed to be talking about commercial things, but I can't help myself. You got it, man. This is where I started, man. This is where I cut my teeth, man, and at Fairchild. So this is, you know, I revert back to my roots here, man. So, you know, it is, and I do think that's how it's going to come out. It's going to be grassroots is how it's going to happen. I don't think it'll be big companies that do it. I think it'll be a grassroots way, and somebody is going to hit a home run, and then it's going to change everything. But you got to plan for it, and that's where Mango Board comes in, and that's where everything comes in, because right now we're all just grasping at straws. It's disorganized, and everywhere in the world, and there's no everybody is talking about things in many different ways. Nobody's talking on the same page about it. So that's really, I know that's not a country report out of Mexico. Now I could just tell you that in Mexico we do grow a lot of mangoes, and we grow champagne mangoes, and the champagne mangoes are all about control points, and that's what makes the trademark. When it starts, it's a Ataulfo. When it finishes, it's a champagne. And I do know the difference, by the way. Some people have accused me of not knowing the difference. In fact, anyway, I won't go to that story. Anyway, I'm looking at Ramon. He's like, no, don't say what you're about to say. Anyway, okay. And just because then you're going to send a lawyer to come talk to me, and I don't need it. I know. All right, so very good. That was my talk.
That's the reason they're not coming guns blazing. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, so the question was, what do we do about tariffs?
Price gonna go up. How about the comparability?
Hey, look, that's real simple. We're prepared for tariffs. Any company that is bringing in fruits or vegetables in the United States has to prepare for tariffs, and that's what we did. It just becomes a cost of doing business. So that's what happens. We prepare. Whenever that started to talk, you can't sit around and worry or hope. You have to be prepared. Whenever they talk about anything, this is a successful mango company in any offshore country is going to be prepared for tariffs, because one never knows. And so we don't worry about it. If they come, they come. We paid the tariffs out of Mexico for 3 days, and it cost our company a lot of money.
So it's going to be added to the consumer price then?
Not for us. No, we don't add to it at all. That's the whole problem.
Oh, okay.
It is that we will pass that. We will share the costs with the grower. It'll just become harder and harder to source mangoes until you get to a point where you're going to have to decide, what is it? Do you want to receive fruit or not? Because it'll become an economic question. It just will be. It's all just about an economic question. And if you, again, I am old enough. Dale is old enough too to remember that the fact that we used to sit around our dining room table, and my dad used to say, one day, son, the mango would become a commodity. Because at that point, up until 1992, now I'm not that old, okay? I'm 60, but in 1992, Florida produced all of the mangoes eaten in the United States. So the bottom line is, do we have to eat mangoes? No. We don't have to eat mangoes in the United States. We don't have to. So the whole point is, in 1992, see, I love to get in trouble with Mango Board. It's like Ramon's face is priceless here. Anyway, yeah. But in 1992, Florida produced all the mangoes in the United States. There was no importation into there. And the first country that got into the United States was Haiti, and Peru second, and then Mexico, okay? What happened in 1992? Hurricane Andrew. When Hurricane Andrew happened, we got sidelined for quite a while, and then boom, it opened it up. And then you either evolve or die. The industry partially died, but then they evolved. And that's really what it's all about. And so, yeah, it becomes economic questions, right? Right now, if, they'll put the tariffs on blueberries. Biggest producer of blueberries is sitting right over there from Campo Sol in our room here, right? Our friend from Campo Sol. They're the biggest blueberry producers in South America. All right? And they have a plan for tariffs, just like we all do. You have to. Yeah. So, we'll all figure it out. It's all okay.
I have another question. You know that you said you are importing Q Savoy. One time I bought Q Savoy, a box of it. It's just like, oh, that's so premature. It's like, I throw it away all.
So see, the funny thing is, different countries have different levels of maturity on Q Savoy that they like, right? And so we made the mistake one time of sending Q Savoy to a major retailer in the United States, and the fruit had sat around and it ripened. And they ate that mango, and because it was a rejection from of a wholesaler, because it was too far high maturity for the Cambodian retailer or the wholesaler that had it, right? So they like it on the less mature side, right? And when it's still firm and hard. That's how they like it. So it got sent to Whole Foods, and Whole Foods ate it, and they said, oh my God, this thing is incredible. It tastes like berries, and it tastes like this, but it was dead ripe. And it's like, none of us eat Q Savoy that way. I don't eat Q Savoy that way. I eat it green. And that's the way I like it. But, then now we can't sell anything to them. They want us to put Q Savoy in clamshells and do that whole thing. But so anyway, yeah, that's the problem also with specialty varieties, is they all have different maturities, different presentations. I mean, we haven't even, that's one of the things that is out there when you're talking about commercial mangoes and varieties. There are a million different presentations, right? Boxes, box types, clamshells, all that sort of stuff. Now everybody wants to put mangoes in plastic bags. Is that a good idea? Not for those of us who know how to eat mangoes. You don't put a mango in a plastic bag, but you do if you're Publix, because that's how Publix thinks you sell things. Because apples you put in a plastic bag, why would it be any different for a mango? Well, it's because it's a different fruit, man. That's the way you should know that, but you don't, because they're not horticulturists. They didn't go to post-harvest class, But anyway, that's the real problem. We are constantly educating our consumer. One of the real advantages that I have in the commercial world is I work with growers. I go from the growers, I work all the way through transportation, the logistics, all the quality, and I work with the retailers, and I work on the strategic planning of all of that. So I can control all of those steps of the way, or at least feel like I have some control, right? And that's the real trick on the whole thing.
Do we have any additional questions?
So 2 of the 4 specialty varieties you listed that are being produced in Mexico are primarily for green consumption. You mentioned Q Savoy, and the other one is Totapuri, which is eaten basically exclusively green by the Indian diaspora. At one point in time, they were planting a lot of Namdok Mai in Mexico.
Oh, I left Namdok Mai off my list. That's
yes.
one I forgot.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. But I recall a long time ago you saying that Namdok Mai performed wildly differently depending on the state it was being grown in Mexico, which raises the question, if they're looking for this unicorn Honeycrisp mango to be grown in Mexico, one would presume that variety would have to perform relatively uniformly through all these different regions of the country, and it seems that some mangoes don't when you try them in Mexico. Do you know of any, and it seems like it's very difficult to dislodge these large commercial producers from the notion that they have to produce, more than just these single varieties, these monoliths that they've been using for a while now. Do you know of any independent producers or growers that are trialing other stuff?
Hundreds. of other growers that are trialing. And our company, we are trialing many things that we do to try to do that. I will say, I think, so I did forget to mention Nam Doc Mai. Nam Doc Mai is bigger than Malacca, actually. So we bring in a lot of Nam Doc Mai. And it is sold mostly ripe, very little green. But it'll depend again on your market. And a lot of the Nam Doc Mai that come in the United States are actually sold as Ataulfo, because no one identifies them differently, right? They just ship them under those names. So if you look at a lot of the EMIX numbers, a lot of those Ataulfo numbers, not a lot, but like 1 million boxes may be Nam Doc Mai. So but the other point is, yeah, across Mexico, just like Peru, is a very, we're growing across 2,000 miles of latitude, 1,500 miles of latitude. And we are growing in different soil types, different climates, and the whole thing. And the climates are constantly changing. So right now, it has, if you grow mangoes in Nayarit, Sinaloa, we now have more hurricanes in Mexico than we have in Florida. And we have for the last couple years. So basically, we get hit every month and a half. Well, for those of us from Florida, we know growing mangoes in hurricanes is no fun. It's hard. And that's what happens. And it's not just what happens when the hurricane hits your trees. They knock your leaves off. They take your tree down. You end up with fruit drop the next year. It's a big mess, okay? It has been raining every night in Nayarit for 3 weeks. Every night, all night, heavy. Again, if you're trying to grow mangoes and it's raining every night, heavy, you're not having fun, okay? You are not having fun. We are not having fun. But we still are packing, doing that stuff. But this is the thing. The climates are changing, the varieties, and everyone is trying to fit. They're trying to find a variety that fits into every size hole, right? They're trying to find that. And it doesn't exist. So the only way to do this is you have to develop your own varieties for your own niche markets in your countries, and you have to do that. And it's not going to come from, it may come from companies the size of ours, but you would have to have a different structure for how you do it. Because we don't have time to mess around. We pack 10 loads a day in our packing house. You were talking about coming out of Dominican Republic that it was 9 to 14 loads a week. Well, we do that in a day, every day. And when you're packing 10 loads a day, you can't be worried about 5 pallets of Nam Doc Mai, right? You can't. So it's very, very hard to scale that with the size of our company. That's the challenge that I have had. And so but we have had some success, and we do, I mean, if you want to go and see kale savoy orchards, I can take you to Michoacan, and, there's 300 hectare kale savoy orchards in Michoacan, right? As far as the eye can see, kale savoy, and same thing for Nam Doc Mai, and a few other things, right? And every one of them, you have to not only adapt to to the state they're growing and how you're growing them, you have to adapt it to, there's just a million things you got to do that is very complicated to do it. I think the innovation will come frankly, out of Spain, out of Israel, out of the subtropics. That's where I believe the innovation will come out of Taiwan, out of, if you want to look at probably the biggest marketing dollar for specialty mangoes, that's Melissa's. And Melissa brings all that stuff out of Taiwan, right? And Australia, but Taiwan is their real niche. And it's a great story that they're telling. And I think that's the kind of thing that will open up and make for real growth, because you got to be smaller in terms of that. And you have to be more agile. It's the same advantage we have in Florida, that agility, that we're small. And when you're small, you can skirt around it, right? You know, the biggest thing is, you know, the set of problems we have in Mexico is a whole different set of problems than that's here in Florida, or for people that are trying to make specialty marketing. And the other thing with mangoes, and the only reason that I'll disagree with anyone who says that mangoes will become the next avocado. Okay, can you park a mango on a tree? Can you store a mango on a tree like you can an avocado? No, you cannot. So until you can store a mango on a tree, the grower will never have the ability to control marketing like an avocado grower can. Avocado grower cuts off the water, the avocado just goes and just sits there like that for 2 months, right? Do that with a mango tree, what happens? They die, or the fruit fall off, right? So it's the problem, that's a big problem. And another problem is that you just can't, and we have never had, the other aha moment will be some sort of a controlled storage of mangoes. When we can put a mango to sleep and wake it up when it gets across the ocean and be edible, then we're talking, that'll be a game changer, right? Biggest problem of, you know, anywhere in the world, if you're having to go on a ship and it takes you, I mean, like, look at Brazil. Brazil can grow and outdo all of the countries we're talking about in mango production. They have one problem. They're way down there, okay? And in order to get their ship here, the reason that we don't do yellow mangoes out of Brazil, we don't do champagnes out of Brazil, is because they can't produce a champagne. They can produce an Ataulfo that doesn't taste good, but they can't produce a champagne because it's too far. The champagne only has a certain amount of post-harvest days of life. That's the other problem with Kent. Kent only has a certain amount of, and you all know this about Kent, right? You all pick a Kent, put it on your shelf. How long does it last there compared to a Tommy? You know, shelf life is everything when you're talking post-harvest. All right, so I think that's that. I don't know if there are any other questions.
What's your favorite? Name 3 stringy mangoes that you love.
Stringy mangoes? So I'm traumatized in life because when my wife is Brazilian, and when I married my wife, she was really Brazilian. Now she's Americanized, yeah. So when I married her, she told me, she says, you Americans, you're all so soft and all that stuff. You only want to eat mangoes with no fiber. I want you to get me turpentines, and our babies are going to only have turpentine mango juice because it's the best mango. In Brazil, that's Carlachina, and there's a few turpentine type mangoes. So I spent years juicing turpentine mangoes for our kids, right? So I was very glad when my wife became Americanized and I didn't have to squeeze turpentine mangoes all the day to get mango juice. So, food safety, yes, absolutely. I did everything perfect and hot packed it and everything else. I got other stories about making my own baby food. Don't get me started. Okay, true confession, I eat mangoes all day, but I eat only things I really like now, and that depends on the season. Angie is the one constant. I eat Angie every day when I have them. I just love that mango, and I've always have. And I love Cogg's Hall because Cogg's Hall was the mango my dad brought home to me in the bucket, And that's the mango that, when he was working with your dad, and I grew up eating that, and that's just my mango. I don't eat mangoes very much with fiber, really not at all. But if I had to eat a mango with fiber, it would be panchada racalasa. Huh? Yeah. Or pederasum. No, panchada racalasa not, but pederasum definitely is. I like pederasum, but again, I really don't eat them that much. I end up eating a lot of fibrous mangoes of piva because I need them for rootstock. So then I just don't waste anything. I'm cheap, man. I don't waste anything. What can I say? Yeah. I'm not convinced on that. I'm not a Caribbean spice kind of mango guy. I like my friends from India. You know, my nickname is Nutcut in India. I have a nickname in India, so I have to represent. So I like things in the line of Alfonso. So that's my favorite, Alfonso, and in the lines of Myanmar. So I love, anything coming in, orange sherbets and all of that, and a lot of that. We've bred a lot of those flavors of Demos and all those, and the Alampur Banishan. Those northern India and Alfonsos are like my flavor things.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have some time left over with the session, and what I want to do right now is sort of do a QA. We don't have to only have the afternoon people speak. We could do this as a cohesive union between the two sessions. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but to get sort of the conversation started, as I mentioned during my presentation, we do a survey every month on mango consumption trends. And one of the things that they mentioned is that consumers don't really look at mango varieties when they're buying, right? They just buy whatever's on the shelf. They think every round mango is a round mango. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on how we can start teaching consumers to differentiate those mangoes from people who work commercially or people who are growers here locally.
Well, I would say catchy names. Obviously, consumers recognize things like cotton candy grapes and Honeycrisp apples now. So if the name has enough mass appeal, then that certainly can contribute to varietal recognition, probably even more so than just how the quality of the fruit happens to be. Although obviously you want the quality of the fruit to be quite high. Now the fact that consumers don't recognize mangoes by varietal name probably is to the benefit of those whom would want different varieties appearing on shelves. But as far as trying to get name recognition for consumers, it's got to be something that's got a catchy name. So, in fact, now within the Florida industry, most of the new selections have catchy names. We don't name mangoes after people or human beings anymore. We name them after other fruits. And part of that, or a big part of that, is because it builds hype for those varieties. So when I think of some of the newer selections, I think of things with names that are, not just after other fruits like orange sherbet or what have you, but then things like cotton candy and sweet tarts. So we're naming them after candies, or creme brulee, or apricot. We're naming them again after other fruits. Ambrosia, yeah. So that's what I think about that.
Any comments?
I've named an awful lot of mangoes. Okay, we've named a lot of mangoes, and we did it out of boredom and to try to keep kids involved in the process. So that's why we had our Celestial series, because the flavor's out of this world, and then we went to Greek gods, and then we went to Native American deities, and then we've gone to Indian deities, and we've gone to every other thing because, again, we were just trying to keep the next generations involved when you're picking and washing mangoes all day, you got to have something to talk about. And so we would come up with the names and have a good laugh and all of that stuff. But it's an interesting thing on naming, because we haven't named anything after what a flavor was, because I didn't want to tell you what it tasted like. Again, it's out of this world, man. You can't even explain it. That's how good it is. But that's really true confessions of how we came up with names. Well, and one of the things is, and you guys know I've said this before, but I think the thing that would be most helpful to everyone in the mango industry across the world would be if we would quit referring to the general terms of mangoes as red, green, and yellow, which is what we do because of PLUs. And the other thing is, in Mexico, we refer to all mangoes that are not Ataulfo are referred to as bolas, right? Round mangoes. And that is just absolutely the most not very smart thing to do as an industry. If you're growing those mangoes, how can you refer to it as that? You're trying to sell things as quality, and you don't even differentiate between them, but you want a different price. So we want a different price on Kent's, but we call it the same thing as a Tommy. Well, again, and that's what I'm fighting against in order to try to make a trademark of something, and until you can term it differently, it's never going to work, because everyone's just going to call it a round mango. Well, that's just ludicrous. I'm sorry, it is, and we got to change that.
Well, if you noticed the marketing that goes on in places like smoke shops or dispensaries, where they have all these names that are very similar to the mangoes that we're talking about: orange sherbet, cotton candy, diesel, sour diesel, and they market and package these medicinal marijuanas like if it's for kids. And I think if you just focus more on the marketing, maybe put a sticker on each mango with the name on it, and make it fun, make it animated, it could really differentiate all the different varieties of mangoes to new customers, and especially the younger customers. If they see a mango that says orange essence or sugarloaf or orange sherbet, they're going to raise an eyebrow, just like they do when they go to smoke shops.
I remember your name for a while.
Question? We have a question about here.
Well, so the other thing on that, though, is like the success of the champagne mango, and then the offshoots of that, like Publix calls it honey mango, or whomever sells to Publix or whatever. So obviously there's some attempt on the part of commercial producers overseas to give them catchy names, and it's worked to some effect. At least it's had success with Ataulfo, right? So nobody calls them Ataulfos, they call them champagne, or they call them honey, or what are some of the other names, Richard, that they've come up with it?
So it happened not in this very room, but right down there, the first time I got thrown off of National Mango Board, because we had the mango display, and I had received mangoes from different commercial people to put on the on the tasting. So we are using mangoes on the tasting from commercial suppliers. And I received mangoes from Cerulli Brothers. They were champagnes, but I put them on the taste test, one on one side, one on the other, and it's the same mangoes in there. The people would go through and do the same thing. One was called Ataulfo, and one was called Champagne. And it's the same mango. We're cutting up the same mangoes, okay? It won 2 times to 1. It got twice as many votes as being a better mango than naming it Ataulfo. And And I was like, I rest my case, right? And that's the issue. There is a lot in a name, absolutely.
So I just want to add a comment to that. At the National Mango Board, with our current order and the regulations for us to do research and marketing, one of the things that we must do is just market all mangoes as, you know, I mean, without differentiating. What I shared with you this morning about differentiation, yes, try to work as much as possible in differentiating your brand or your variety, but that's on you. On our case, we promote all of the mangoes in the most unison way. But then there are ways to go around that, and I think you bring up a good idea, Julian, and that is I mean, at the point of sale, when you see the different mango varieties, we now have the technology to put a little PLU with a QR code that can actually educate the consumer. And one of our pillars, I mean, our pillars are, you know, I mean, of course, quality, and then marketing, and then education of the consumer, research, and finally industry relations. But in the consumer education section, at the point of sale, it's so important that, you know, I mean, the consumer, once they have the mango in front of them, they must, or you know, I mean, in order to trigger that purchasing decision, they need to think quick and say, okay, I know how to pick, I know how to handle it, cut it, and I know, or I would know what to do with that mango. These things can actually, at a very high level, and differentiating, particularly for the one piece or the one variety that they have in front of them, can be achieved with that information source right there and the technology available, so they can actually get it immediately and then make that purchase decision right there, rather than to go to the next fruit or something else. But it is differentiation. I think you guys are, and what you do here in the domestic production, it's kind of unique, in the flavors and all that, but that's how people are willing to pay those premiums for that fruit. But they know what they're buying, and that's why they're paying what they're paying. And in the more mainstream section, one of our strategies being that we have to have mango 52 weeks a year. That means we got to work with multiple varieties, multiple countries, and of course, all points of entry. That is a much more logistic a challenge to have. But great idea, and I think our marketing team can actually pick up. We've done some of that, or we're working on some of those ideas on how to improve the efficiency of the consumer education process right at the point of sale. Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions for any of the presenters of the day? Okay, I think that would call the end of our session. We're ending a little bit earlier. However, if you would stay with us, we do have a reception coming up at 4 p.m. that we would like to invite you guys. Thank you for your participation.